Hey friends, today's topic is Destiny's new expansion being delayed till June 9th and the underlying game issues that could be leading to it. While I'm putting on a detective hat in today's video, nothing is factual, I'm not trying to be right, this is just an opinion piece, and I'm really just using this video as an excuse to entertain community viewers while I mull over my own thoughts. On screen now I made a word web of all potential issues that Bungie would have to tackle to give Destiny 2 the best chance to succeed with its remaining lifespan. I'm going to start off with the topic of Marathon's fate and go clockwise. So grab some snacks, strap in, because it's going to be a long one. Starting off with Marathon's fate. While it's easy to point the finger at Marathon, even if Destiny had a full dev team, they'd have to know what direction the game is going in order to work on it. Without direction, they'll just chase their own tail, stagnate, or risk ruining the game further. Marathon's success could yield more likely approval for big budgets and big ticket decision making that could lead to a Destiny 3 and so on. Marathon's failure could mean absolute studio failure, but in my opinion, that's where Bungie does their best work. Could create a situation where their back's against the wall and they have to pump out easy W after easy W to gain community faith again, and this might put Destiny into a reasonable financial stable state before tackling more projects if that's what Sony wants, since they seem to be obsessed with live service. The next topic is awkward monetization model. Just take a look at the Steam page and attempt to advise a friend on what's worth their money. It's a mess, and undoubtedly making players not even give the game a chance, despite the game being free. Next, power creep and sunsetting. This is a huge topic section. The Destiny community did not seem to be on board with Bungie's first take on sunsetting, or put simply, expiration dates on old gear to incentivize trying new activities to acquire unusually more powerful and unique gear. The problem with Bungie's first take is that it took players way too long to finalize a fun build, not knowing that they'd be missing too many pieces of that build in the future for it to remain fun. Bungie had to release thousands of weapon elements, perk, and archetypes on a yearly cycle, which they didn't even come close to. They also had to make sure the acquisition methods were fast enough or guaranteed enough that players wouldn't give up from the start. Some players like games that thrive on the randomness of gear, having influence on activities, letting fate decide a player's impact, whereas others like more linear acquisition so they can play with variety in a sandbox. Then there's also the risk of new gear being so powerful that the game becomes instantly stale, since older, more fun builds are not viable anymore in the content that fights back. For the reasons I just gave and many more that I won't go into for time's sake, Bungie's first take on sunsetting was not it, but despite that, it still needed to happen. Side grades and clever new designs for weapons could not temper power creep for as long as necessary. While I still think there are many more side grades yet to still happen, the general loot chasing, gambling player base wants an obviously overpowered carrot on the stick, and the only way to satiate that pace is to sunset frequently. In a way, Bungie seemingly accidentally already does this with what I'm going to call experiential FOMO, like the recent Bow Arms Week, where bows were nuking bosses for just that single week. Or even right now, where Controverse Hold exotic gauntlets chunk bosses. You had to be there. And it might be gone in a week. Or a year. Who knows? Regardless, other games are clear on their identity. World of Warcraft has layers of RNG and a theme park-like experience that basically resets progression every expansion. RuneScape, on the other hand, has permanent progression that encourages cross-pollination of skills to obtain new gear to tackle new challenges. While RuneScape does have a definitive end in regards to player skill and gear progression, the journey of that progression is exciting for most of the way, and it also takes thousands of hours to get there anyway. Diablo has layers of RNG, but has an eternal realm and a seasonal realm, or server, so it's not like there aren't proven strategies for sunsetting. Obviously, Destiny has a PvP component and very much lives and dies with sunsetting and power creep versus sandbox balancing and game mode creation ebbs and flows. All this being said, we don't know what's going on inside Bungie, so we can only speculate why they don't pick a direction with sunsetting or not and just go. For example, we could have had Destiny 7 by now if they keep making hard ends to certain eras of the game instead of sunsetting the live game and bolting content. I'm cutting this discussion off very early, but hopefully you have a better idea of how complicated this could be. The next topic is gear FOMO, or fear of missing out. One of the most annoying aspects of Destiny's loot system is the idea that one day you'll be able to obtain a weapon, but your vault is filling up, so you delete things that aren't immediately useful or possibly useful in the future, but you make a slight mistake on anticipating the future Sandbox update, and now a very fun or competitive build is missing an acquisition method for a key component of that build. This is especially frustrating when you have a new player asking you where to get something because your build looks fun. Examples include not being able to get Rose Hand Cannon, Redrix's S-Stock, BXR Battler from the competitive playlist, not being able to get triple perks from Shax or Zavala, not being able to get the ARC version of Finite Impactor from Iron Banner to use with Bakris, not being able to get the Something New Hand Cannon from the Dawning, not getting Mint Retrograde, one of the most meta-influencing PvE weapons right now, Igneous Hammer from, Trials of Osiris, with the Celerity perk, the Inquisitor Slug Shotgun, most Vorpal Weapon primaries, Mida Macro Tool, Drang, Midnight Coup Hand Cannon, which has an origin trait that is kind of like half a Demolitionist. All these weapons serve some sort of competitive or fun purpose, and they're not obtainable. Next topic is bloat. Because the game is so old, if something new is added, sometimes Bungie has to account for every old thing to fit the new addition. Even a simple addition can be an exponentially difficult task to add for full game parity. Next topic, casual versus hardcore and novice versus expert. These player archetype combinations all have very different wants and needs to feel engaged and driven to continue interacting with the game. In short, successfully onboarding new players is just as important as giving a mountain to climb, which is just as important as giving them a beautiful sight to see when they're at the top. Next topic, new player experience and convolution. Speaking of onboarding new players, for some players, a game's launch is the only time where they'll give it an honest chance. Things that can hurt a first impression are cheaters, bad netcode, scandals and past developer mistakes, unfinished essential features, too much of a learning curve with too few easily accessible resources and tutorials. This is an important one. Too much time until the fun begins. UI hell. Microtransaction and monetization confusion. And so many more unlisted things. The convolution happens when a player tries the game after launch. In Destiny's case, the original story isn't even in the game anymore. The UI is hell. You essentially need to stream your screen to an immersed player so they can walk you through all the UI inundation to tell you what actually matters for getting to the fun and being self-sufficient enough to progress on your own. Destiny also has the habit of forcing the player to undertake entirely outdated campaigns, questlines, and activities that reward a player with the tools for fun builds when they lack that build during the said activities. Some of these really show their age, and I accidentally find new soft locks or UI inconsistencies when I complete them on my alt accounts, and the only reason I complete them without having to look up help is because I'm an expert player, and sometimes I even do have to look up the help. It's crazy. I'm surprised Bungie hasn't offered more fun alternatives for unlocking Stasis, Strand, and Prism subclasses. I'm even more surprised they haven't also monetized this and Vault Space. Giant topic next. Destiny 3. Since players peak interest during a game's launch and hate the feeling of being left behind, Destiny 3 seems like an obvious gambit for the success of Destiny, even though it could be essentially the same game as Destiny 2. I will not be able to sleep at night if I don't mention Destiny 2 annoyances that should never make it into Destiny 3. The DCV. Getting kicked out of the menu when Getting kicked out of a menu when a loading screen is hit or done. No alternate activities during the queue. You just have to sit there and stare at a fraction. Melees. Everything about melees feel bad. Art team. Now respectfully, the art team makes really good stuff, but I'm tired of walking over a pebble, the pebble making me go in the air, and me being in the air makes me miss shots. I'm tired of artificial ceilings. I'm tired of death barriers. I'm tired of fake cover. I'm just tired of the maps not being ironed out. Give us better ways of building into AE and preventing ground landing, aim punch, and screen shake, and other immersion additions. There is no PvP firing range. Why? That's such a slap to the face. When the tower is full, you can't load into the tower. So you'll just be flying permanently. Also, why is it even necessary to have other players in the tower? This isn't an MMO. Like on console, people don't even talk to each other. Unless you're playing competitive playlist and they open their ghost to tell you like, what are we doing? Even though they went 1-16. There's also level up and experience banners that block the screen and don't let you see if your abilities are charged. And I have lost many rounds in trials to being like, yo, I kind of need the suppressor now. So many more stuff. While Destiny 3 is being cooked in the oven, this is of significant importance. A core identity has to be decided and stuck to without toxic positivity steering the ship in circles by creating conflicting ideas that disrupt what would otherwise be sensible balance to the sandbox, economy, etc. This could imply a hard divide between PvP and PvE or not. This could be Diablostiny or Destiny Craft or not. This could be a third-person game with a completely different subgenre or not. But it can't be everything at once if it has conflicting elements. Conflicting elements are what poisons the game. Bungie's doing a fantastic job drawing a clear line of what Marathon is, and most importantly, what Marathon is not. Destiny needs to do the same to land a permanent audience that isn't chasing nostalgia illusions from what the game was at a population high for the next 10 years. In the long run, it'll be healthier. RuneScape's explosion back to the top is proof that finding your footing again is possible. The next topic is player progression versus chores. This is the part where I talk about tier 5 loot and things that waste a player's time, like killing Thrall at Shirochi to finish a weapon catalyst. So as far as player progression goes, even in Destiny 1, white, green, and blue rarity loot were cycled through too quickly on the way to purple legendary items. I still remember my first legendary. It was a Lord High Fixer hand cannon with hipfire grip and reactive reload, also known as kill clip. In Destiny 2, you blaze through loot rarities within, no exaggeration, minutes. This is why I suspect that the tier system was created. It gives players a feeling of progression, using tier 1 gear to tackle activities to unlock tier 2 gear, and so on. In PvE, the tier system is awkward because as long as you roll the right weapon roll, tier 1 weapons are more serviceable in all content in the game than a tier 5 with the wrong roll. Now for armor, you could argue that having a certain stat line will yield better damage in a contest raid, and that would be true. However, it turns out that simply farming the old armor before this system, before the rework, which you could still do by the way, is arguably better for pure damage situations. This is all moot though, because any player will come to the conclusion that they won't raid or do endgame activities anyway till they're unlocking tier 5 gear naturally, because they don't want to rerun the raid later. They'd rather rip that band-aid off beforehand. To acquire tier 5 gear, a player has to play any portal activity until their power level reads 451. This took 140 hours with the fastest methods before Bungie significantly buffed it. I'm talking 70 hours or faster with the new fastest methods. I've made many videos detailing and optimizing this grind, but I myself went for a completely passive route that only played PvP to level my Destiny characters. This took 110 hours from start to finish. What made it fun is that I optimized PvP builds, utilizing tier 1 to 4 armor with hyper-specific builds that hid the weaknesses from having less total armor stats. For example, if you use the Mantle of Battle Harmony exotic class item, then you don't realistically need to spec into the super stat as long as you're getting kills. There are many builds like this that functionally play a competitive loadout with only minor opportunity cost to the best builds in the game. When I phrase it this way, you just get to have fun for 110 hours, then you can return to doing chores. Unfortunately, there's no in-game guide to point players in this direction. After you unlock tier 5s, Then you can go get the gear you want, then you can optimize builds, you can play the content you want in the most fun way. The sad part about this system is that it only takes 100-ish hours to get back to the same loot rarity problem that Bungie wanted to solve in the first place. Anything that isn't a tier 5 isn't interacted with. Tier 5s are given out like candy, even though tier 4s are more than serviceable. Obviously, Bungie designs a progression system because some players need that nudge in any direction, and it gives them a checklist and a goal to go for. However, players like myself exist that simply see this as an unnecessary chore that makes recommending the game to friends a struggle. The next topic is staleness. Franchise fatigue might be the real killer of this game. Objectively, we have the most difficult activities with the most deep build crafting sandbox to tackle it with, obviously discounting PvE bugs like controverse chunking and so forth. I can go to the firing range for hours and test hypothetical raid damage scenarios and cook up some really solid team rotations that fall outside the scope of the big three, being Lucky Pants Hunter, Finality Augur with Mint Retrograde or Peacekeepers, and 1-2 Punch Melee Grapple. I can load up Lawless Frontier and limit test roam builds that keep up with Stronghold Lightsaber Titan that utilizes rare treasures from my vault. Dare I say, I'm having fun with some of the things I usually see as chores, and that feels amazing. I seriously tip my hat to the Bungie devs who basically gave us Destiny 3 early. But none of that matters, because as long as public sentiment is cue the breakup music, the breakup sigh. I log in and I stare at the orbit screen with nothing to do. None of my friends raid anymore. This would be a lot funnier if I edited my videos. Anyway, essentially the cadence of the game has ran its course. The players can anticipate every objective beat. They're tired of protecting the ghost, decrypting a door, standing in an arbitrary circle to progress. Finally, having diverse builds and the option to let the enemies hurt you is not enough. What the players crave is the unknown. They want to be lost in a world and not immediately know the solution, even if we don't agree on what the optimal solution is. That's a tall order in the modern day, especially with content creators like myself. If I piqued anyone's interest with this section, I recommend watching a video titled Why It's Rude to Suck at Warcraft by Folding Ideas. The next topic is Sandbox outliers dominate the game. This is an extension of the last topic. When time-efficient players are given a master key, there is no need to keep other keys. Just keep using the master key. That's how Controverse builds and the lightsaber builds feel right now. They are so far and above other options that not using them can almost feel rude for risking a failure on what would otherwise be a free clear. This isn't the first time outliers have persisted for too long. Prismatic Consecration Titan was the only PvE class for roam content for what seemed like over a year. I completely understand that some PvE players build their personality around a less potent build that happens to utilize something like Consecration, so nerfing it would kill the fun for those players. But at the same time, expert practices enforce the need to run what is best in a random LFG group to be considerate of other players' time. As a result, you feel forced to run the same build over and over again. At first it may be fun, but it loses its luster within days, let alone a year. If frequent balancing passes are impossible for the dev team, then perhaps it's time to encourage alternate strategies for more loot or similar incentives. If you complete the Arc Warlock challenge, you get triple loot for the first completion of the week. I'm not going to dwell on potential solutions. I'm just pointing out that I feel why it's rude to suck at Destiny aura from LFG anytime I bring something unconventional, even though I'm a grandmaster at piloting that build. Unrelated but related, if you're a Stronghold Titan that only holds block when you could be helping your team progress the activity, hit me with your favorite anime recommendations, since that obviously must be what you're doing on the side monitor. Next topic, releasing things half finished. I know y'all's ass did not release the portal after copious amounts of data suggested it was not the move in Destiny 1. I know y'all's ass did not release the portal, missing features and incentives while washing away other systems in the game that weren't fully replaced yet. Viewer, listen to the whole sentence, the whole paragraph here. I don't think the portal was implemented in the best way. but we can't be pretending it's the devil. Question: what were you doing in Destiny before the portal existed? Now, what are you doing after the portal? For me, it's the same damn thing, except I can shuffle activities to get more rewards to get chores done faster. I give the portal the slightest of slightest passes because my dad also plays Destiny, and I asked him, hey, do you like the portal? And he said, oh, it's great, because he felt overwhelmed not knowing what to do, and now he just does whatever loot he's curious about in the portal. So he has a checklist. Honestly, mission accomplished. But at what cost? The portal took the soul out of the game and still isn't even fully integrated. Cough, cough. Like, why are there old Crucible playlists that aren't in the PvP portal? Nobody even knows how to navigate to those, so no one's gonna play them. Perception is reality to Destiny's biggest fans. They genuinely like the look and the mystique of the old UI, and the portal's arguably more convoluted and corporate soulless looking. It's the same argument as recognizing that fast food restaurants used to look unique and had character, but now they all have that same soulless look. That's how diehard fans feel about the portal, despite the benefits that I recognize. Moral of the story: delay until the whole system is here, rather than permanently keeping us half-baked. Next topic, the time gates and drip feed rate. Surely on June 9th, we get all the tier 5 loot off the rip, right? I understand the need for time gates since players clear content significantly faster than it can be created, but I want to add that it can feel like a chore when done too much. For example, Pantheon is one of my favorite additions to the game ever. I did not enjoy having to replay it multiple weeks when I only wanted to play the hardest week / the full activity. Why did Pantheon have to go away? This brings us to our next topic. The DCV, Destiny Content Vault, and getting rid of favorites. 200 gigabytes, whatever. There are absolutely crowd favorite activities that had no business ever going back into the DCV. This ain't the Disney Vault. There is no patch rollback to experience the good content. Leave them in the game and update the activity all at once if needing to be refreshed. There's literally no excuse now that the portal allows for no continuity of activities. If this same stuff is pulled in Destiny 3, please allow for timeline snapshots like the Xbox 360 version of Destiny 1 that sits in stasis in a completely different sandbox. The next one's a big one. PvP direction, PvE evolution, and the never-ending fight of separating the sandboxes. I don't know what the answer is to PvP overall, because that houses all kinds of different interests due to the game failing to solidify an identity. Although I didn't like the recent Bowglaive only Arms Week playlist, the idea of having a separate curated playlist for certain types of PvP players sounds great to me. Players will hear this and immediately think that that sentence somehow means forcing the whole game, including PvE, to have watered down readable ability tuning and lackluster item strength all around. That's not asking for the same thing. In fact, if you want power fantasy, power spikes, and to feel like a superhero, then explain to me why you aren't perma-queuing the Mayhem playlist in PvP. Isn't it so much more fun when you have infinite trip mines and infinite golden guns as the most common kit to fight because people for whatever reason in that playlist feel the need to optimize to win? I know I'm doing a bad faith argument here, but I'm trying to paint the picture that it's never that simple. For example, most bad faith PvP arguments use population as the main reason why something is good or bad. Checkmate failed for a variety of reasons. Right Now's PvP failed for a variety of reasons. Double Primary failed for a variety of reasons. Forsaken did decline eventually despite higher population for a variety of reasons. I think we'd be miserable in the Forsaken sandbox right now, to be honest, since most of the positive sentiment came from no skill-based matchmaking, which just isn't sustainable in the modern day in the current implementation from game studios. Even Destiny 1 House of Wolves and Destiny 2 30th Anniversary were great in the moment, but they'll still sour quickly if revisited with the current lens and game knowledge and franchise familiarity. Destiny players typically either don't play to win, or they don't know how to, or they draw this arbitrary line in the sand where they have to win on their own terms, aka gentlemen's agreements. They'll think something's overtuned in the sandbox is fun, but then another equally potent thing is lame. If they were playing to win, they wouldn't care if the way that they're winning is lame. I find that most Destiny players that send a toxic message in the team chat are either not actually playing to win or not as consistent of a player that they think they are. When the match is getting serious, their idea of going Super Saiyan 2 is putting on Outbreak Perfected. Meanwhile, the top 100 players are in their menu more than in the game, third person peeking, wall hugging with hand cannons, and spamming some combination of invisibility, team healing, or ability nukes when all else fails. Then they trade out with the green weapon. It's literally a different video game to the players solely going for shoulder charges the whole match. Obviously, both archetype of players have a different idea of what would make the game immediately enjoyable for them. One might love checkmate and the other might despise it, but in either case, now that we don't have the large population numbers to create an illusion that the game is more dynamic than it actually is, what is Bungie to do? They have to either pick an identity or create separate curated playlists or figure out the PvE side to generate the larger population that feeds into PvP. Let's talk about PvE's depth. It's greater than ever right now. Even so, I think it would be wise to anticipate the need for truly advanced rotations ahead of when the players acclimate and dominate to what we think the hardest activities are right now. This could be a hotbar, this could be a separate game altogether that isn't even first person and is top-down perspective instead. RuneScape went through this dilemma in the past, but pulled the trigger too early on the evolution while also forcing players to adopt it instead of leaving it as an option. Significant changes like this should always be prepared for a separate ecosystem to mitigate the risk of complete alienation of players not ready or willing to adopt the new systems. In summary, be thinking about this yesterday. This franchise has too many incredible settings and possibilities to simply let it rot. It doesn't even have to be more PvE depth. It just has to be something unique that lets the player experience mystique in the unknown. I personally always wanted to see Destiny from the perspective of a normal human Resident Evil style. The next topic is infrequent quality of life updates and hotfixes. These are what we call easy Ws. For the longest time, PvP players quit the disjunction map, not because it was competitively a disaster map or anything, but because the player culture always trended to sitting in the back with a scout rifle and letting both B flag and power ammo be taken for free. At some point, the map was updated to make the scout rifle lanes less appealing, akin to putting spikes on a park bench so people don't sleep on them. These map alterations were a giant act of good faith for the PvP community. I'd love to see the same action done to Cauldron, where the doors are removed next, and see how it plays. I'd love to see a weekend of maybe just Javelin 4 to experiment with what that does to player engagement numbers. These updates are astronomically more appreciated than some half-baked expansion that somehow made the game worse. I can't believe we have to wait till June 9th for some of the most aggravating and lackluster parts of the Sandbox to get even slightly adjusted. Even disabling PvP items for half a year would be eons better than letting certain outliers ride. Related, I farmed out armor for a PvP build. Turns out the armor set bonus bugged the exotic armor's interaction, and I'm not even sure this one will ever be fixed, looking at Bungie's track record right now. Little updates like fixing the Ferropotent overriding various damage resistance is way better than any expansion, in my opinion. Next topic, live service double-edged sword. There's a quote that goes, "I wish there was a way to know you're in the good old days before you've actually left them." I know a live service is a buzzword money printer right now, but damn would I give anything to roll back to a game state before the good old days were gone. I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but I actively dread Destiny updates that aren't quality of life. This brings us to our final facet of today's video. Lack of game identity, directionless. This is what I deduce when we're told 6 months ago that a roadmap is soon, but now we get news that quality of life updates are delayed till June 9th. I imagine many meetings are held going back and forth about what to do with Destiny. While deciding that, it's not like any real work can get done. So it's like the game state is in stasis. I think Marathon's launch is going to teach many lessons on sticking to your guns. When it's time to get Destiny in motion again, I strongly suggest rolling back to Bungie's older studio mantra. We make games we want to play. Don't overcomplicate it. Make the game you want to play. I refuse. Y'all enjoy playing PvP control matches where you die to truth rockets 20 times because your team sits in the back of the map with the scout rifle. I'm just saying. Thanks for listening, friends. Stay respectful in the comment section. It's a test of your character to stay graceful in these content droughts. I'll see you in the next one. And Bungie, if you want to shoot me an email and make this official and hire me for just having these conversations in a meeting room, I'm down, always available. I'll contract into it. You know how to reach me. Take care, everyone.